started. All right, excellent. Thanks so much for joining us for our second session of case manager reporting. We're going to be going over today. Go ahead and go to the next. Our agenda today is going to just review how to manage the reports page, which we talked a little bit about at the last training. Next one will be how to create new reports, and we're going to talk about report charts, some additional summaries around time spent, money spent, things like that. And then also build out an activity report for individual participants. So how do I get a list of participants and sort of how much has been spent on them, or how much time have they spent, how many instances of service, that sort of thing. And then the next one's going to be building an assessment report. So how to build an assessment report as well in the system overall. And then the last thing I'd like to do is just offer some additional information or sort of technical assistance around some common case manager reporting and reviewing a document that we've put together for that as well. So, all right, excellent. Let's go ahead and get started. So first thing we're going to talk about is building activity report charts. So there are 4 types of charts that you can build in Case Manager. The first one is a bar chart where it has horizontal data. There's also a bar chart that's vertical. You have a line chart and you have a pie chart. Those are our 4 different kinds of charts. So with that in mind, let's log back in over here to Case Manager. Let me hop into the right one here. There we go. All right, awesome. Let's make sure that I've got the right screen up here. Okay, cool. All right, so from here, you can go ahead and go over to your reports section again in your dashboard. Navigation bar, you've got your report section. And in here, during the last training, one of the things we recommended was that you create a new folder specifically for your practice or for building out reports, so it doesn't sort of mess up your larger list. So this is Shannon's practice reports in here. Also, you can build additional folders within this report, that sort of thing as well. So what we're going to talk about now is how to build a chart for an activity report. So let's just build an activity report from scratch just as a review. So again, I'm going to go to add new report. I'm going to name my report. So I'm just going to call this activity report. And I can add a with summaries and charts if that's helpful, just to remind myself that this has that information in there. Oops. All right. And I'm going to put for a demonstration on here. You can put in here for testing, whatever you want to do, what makes sense for you. Okay. Again, if you're a single organization, you're just going to choose single organization. If you have multiple organizations or multiple sites, you can choose multiple and choose which ones you want to see in there as well. All right, excellent. So I'm going to go in here and open up my participant forms. So again, I'm going to pull my profile information in and my activity tracking, because those are the 2 things that I'm tracking right now. All right, excellent. I pulled my 2 forms in. Now that I've pulled my forms in, I'm going to open up my profile form and choose which fields I want to add. So again, I always recommend doing your system ID, last name, first name, because this allows you to be able to sort of identify if something's not quite right in the system. So I'm going to close that back up because that's a long set of fields, and I'm going to open up activity tracking. And then from here, again, I'm going to add in my date, hours. So whenever I pull activity tracking, I always pull in hours instead of minutes, because the assumption is that there's a lot of them. So it's easier for folks to enter in minutes, but it's easier to report in hours. And then I'm going to go ahead and pull in type of activity and service. And then the last thing I'm going to pull in is the completed by. And again, we pull in completed by because that allows us to link back to the form if something in the data doesn't look quite right. All right, next. So from here in the define criteria, or what we call filters, you can add in a filter for date. So if you just wanted to run this for a particular time frame, you could choose that right here as well. If you wanted to run it just for a particular type of activity, you could do that too. So we're going to leave it open just so we can get a lot of data in this report. So I'm not going to put any filters on it here, and I'm going to click next. What's going to come up is a quick view, overview of what's been entered. This is just a preview, so you have to click finish to make sure you're done. Now you may notice something in here like you accidentally pulled minutes instead of hours in, things like that. If that were to happen, you can just go back and make an adjustment from there. But this looks good to me, so I'm going to go ahead and click finish. All right, so again, I have my system ID, last name, first name, the date of activity, hours spent, the type of activity, and then again, this is the completed by, and this is where you can click on this. If this didn't look right, like that date didn't look right, I can click on it, go back and update that particular form. And after I update it, I can go back again to the report. So it's a very easy sort of back and forth to double check your data there. All right, so now that I have my report here, you can see I have 114 rows. I could always just export this into Excel or CSV, and that would just be a normal sort of Excel table. As we talked about on the last training, you can also build a summary. So let's go ahead and go to summary. All right, so I'm going to add a summary that is just going to be counts by activity. So this is going to tell me how many individuals unduplicated received how many counts of service. So, all right, so I'm going to name it counts by activity. I'm going to go down below and I'm going to tell the system what I want to see in this report. So what I'm definitely, or if I want to filter. So the first one is filtering. So if I only wanted a particular set of information, I could do that here. I want everything. So I'm going to click next. And now I'm going to choose my columns. So I'm going to open up activity tracking, and I know I want things broken down by type of service. And I know I want total count and unduplicated count. So I want to know how many individuals received how many of each type of service. So I'm sort of working my way back into that data. I'm going to click next. Now is where I set up sort of what my baseline or majority field is that I want to track. So I'm going to set the type of activity service as the baseline. I can also choose here to see fields that are options. So an activity option that maybe has 0 entries for it, I may still want to see that. But for this case, because I'm going to build a chart, I don't want a lot of 0 entries on the chart. So I'm going to turn off include all possible values. And then I'm going to click next. Now, this is where I can build a chart. I'm going to come back to this. Let's look at the summary first, and then I'll show you how to build a chart. So I'm going to go ahead and click finish. And now here I have my summary, list of activities, my total count, my unduplicated count there for each one of these. Now, let's say the next thing I want to do is build a chart for this. So I want to build a table, a bar chart, whatever that is. So I'm going to click on charts. Now it's going to tell me, oh, there's no charts right now. You have to go to the summary tab because you have to build the chart attached to the summary. So you can click back on summary. So this is still my counts by activity. I'm going to go into edit. I'm not going to change anything here. I just want to get to this bar section over here called add chart. So I'm just going to click next all the way through. Now at my add chart, I'm going to go ahead and turn this on. Okay. So there's some options here in this. So I'm going to just walk you through each one of these. Our PowerPoint also has a list of each one of these, and you'll have access to that as well. So first thing I want to do is name my chart. Normally what I do is I match the summary name to the chart name just to keep it consistent. So you can just easily go up here and copy the summary name. Maybe there we go. And drop it into your chart title. All right, so as I talked about before, we've got 4 different chart types we could do for this, and we'll do the first 3 particularly for this one. Now, this particular report has multiple number counts in it, so a pie chart's a little bit harder for this one. What makes more sense are going to be your bar charts and your line charts, and let me show you what that looks like. So let's start first with the horizontal bar chart. Now, the y-axis is always going to be your type of activity and service. So what are you basing this chart on? We want to base it on the type of activity and service. And then the label could be the same thing. So activity type. So when you build this out and submit it, then you'll be able to see what that looks like. So we'll go over that in a second. So y-axis is the type of activity. activity type is the label for it. And then the x-axis, because the y-axis is the type of service, the x-axis is going to be our counts. And we can do multiple counts. We can do a total count and an unduplicated count. So I usually just call this counts. And you can do counts of participants, however you want that to look like. All right, so over here, now you have to choose your value. So what are these counts going to be? And I usually, for anything that I have an unduplicated and duplicated count for, I like to choose both. So I'm going to choose both as my counts. So again, chart title matches your summary name. Your chart type is really up to you. We'll show you different uses for different ones. The y-axis is always what you're basing this on. So it's the same thing you based your summary on. So that's going to be type of activity and service. The y-axis label is going to be activity type or whatever makes sense for you. And then the label for the other axis is going to be your actual counts, and your counts are also your values. All right, so once we complete that, we're going to click finish. Okay, so it's going to take us back to our summary and we're like, hey, where did our chart go? No big deal. We just go up here to charts and now it's going to open up. So this is simply that particular chart that we just built out. So you can hover over any of these and it's going to give you your counts. So blue is going to be your total count, red is going to be your duplicated count, and you can look at each one of them this way. Now, if you're like, I don't want both counts, you can go down here and cross out unduplicated count and just have total count. Same thing, you can turn that back on and turn off total count and just look at unduplicated count. So again, your counts are along the bottom, the x-axis, your activity type is on the y-axis. This took a little bit of remembering for me for math class on what your x and y axes are, but x is your count and y is your activity type for this particular form. You can always go in and edit if you want to here as well, or download a PNG. So if you wanted to download a copy of this to put into a board report, a grant application, anything like that, internal report, whatever that looks like, you can always just download a PNG of that particular file, and that'll make it easy for you to insert into other things or to share. Now, this is, like we talked about, this is the first bar chart. Let's go ahead and edit this chart. And let's change it to a different type of chart. So again, I can go in and edit. I could go in here and say, okay, I don't want horizontal. I'm going to change it to vertical. It's going to stay the same way. Your Y and X axes are going to be the same, and your values are going to be the same. And we're going to go ahead and click finish. Okay, once we've done that, let's go back to charts up here. And now you're going to see, oh, you know what? I lied. Let's go back to edit chart. I messed up the axes again. So let's go back again. This is a great example of the X and Y axis. So if you're doing a vertical chart, these two things change. So instead of type of activity and service, it's going to be counts. And the Y axis is going to be counts. Oops. And your X axis is going to be activities. And now you can click finish and go back up to charts. And now you're going to see it's correct. You've got your counts going this way and your activities should be showing down here. So let's figure out what we did wrong here. Oh, I know what we did wrong. So we're going to go back and edit again. So chart type, vertical, y-axis is total count, y-axis is counts, x-axis is activities. And again, we need to undo these and change this to activity because that's the x-axis. And we're going to click finish. Let's go back up to charts. And nope, that didn't do it either. So love this on a live training when something goes wrong. So let me go back to edit chart. Fascinating. So let's do this. Not sure why that's not working correctly. Oh. So, well, we're going to skip this particular vertical chart and I'll include a video that explains the difference there. All right, well, in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and go back and I'm going to go back to editing summary. which is where we are right now. So we're going to go ahead and click next, finish. Okay, so let's go ahead and edit. Sorry, let's edit this summary one more time. We're going to go next, next, and one more next to get to chart. And we're going to do this one again, counts by activity, but now we're going to switch to a line chart. Again, the y-axis should be type of activity, believe it or not, not based on the last one, but type of activity service on the y, label is going to be activity type, X is going to be counts, and then you've got your total count and unduplicated count. And let's go ahead and look at our charts here. And okay, so this one actually looks correct now. So you've got your counts by activity type here. Really pretty easy. You can cross out, just do duplicated count versus unduplicated count. That takes it all away. So you can really kind of easily see where things sort of go, which is interesting that health services is pretty consistent, equal counts, but something like community service has a lot more instances than individuals. So it's a nice sort of quick view on that particular screen as well, to make things really easy to view. So again, you can download a PNG. You can also edit this chart. So I just noticed I do have my X and Y's mixed up just like the last one. So no biggie. I'm just going to go in here, and instead of changing the y-axis, I'm going to do counts here and activities here. And let's see if that gets us where we need to be. All right, back up to charts. Yeah, there we go. So it's just changing the titles on that. So you can notice that pretty easily. So we have our counts here, our activities here. Again, you can remove anything or just look at particular entries there as well. Download a PNG, pretty straightforward. All right. Cool. So that's building those charts. Now, the one chart we're not looking at here is the pie chart. And that's because it makes a little bit more sense with some different types of reports. So a pie chart doesn't make as much sense for this, but we can certainly take a look at it. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and go into edit chart. And we're going to do counts by activities. We're going to do a pie chart. And what's different with a pie chart is we don't want both of these counts because it doesn't allow it to do it correctly in a pie chart, because a pie chart is just a one count. So let's do unduplicated count. Y-axis, this is fine. So I'm going to do counts by activity again. This is my pie chart type of activity, but I can only choose one value. That is the difference with this one. I'm going to go ahead and click finish. And again, go up to my charts. And now I can see my counts by activity. So this is fairly interesting. So this is your unduplicated count per activity. And you've got your things here. If you hover over, it's going to tell you what each one of those are. If you want to remove one of these, if you're like, oh, you know what, we really don't want to count basic needs in here because that's a supportive service, you can click it out and you've got the table that way. Let's say that we don't want to count case management because that's just something we always do. You can do that. So you can remove and add things as well to this particular pie chart too. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and go back to the summary here and view that. So right now for each summary, you can only build one chart. So if you want multiple kinds of charts, so like right now for this one, I have just this pie chart because that's what's connected to my summary here. So you can always just build another summary if you want to track it in a different way. So if you wanted to have both a bar chart and a pie chart, you could say activity summary. So just build another one and just call this one, let's say, counts. Let's say counts duplicated and unduplicated. So this is one, and then I could just say like line graph, line chart. Oh my goodness, typing. There we go. So line chart from there. And again, I'm just going to pull in my normal data. I'm going to click next. And my columns are going to be type of activity, total count, unduplicated count. Baseline is my total count. Let's say I'm going to leave in the possible values this time so you can see what that looks like. Click next. And I'm going to go ahead and add a chart right away. So we're going to call this, I would literally just call this the same as up here. Nice. And then I'm going to go line chart. My y-axis is still going to be my type of activity, but my label is going to be count and type of activity / service. And I want both a total count and a duplicated count. So again, I'm just copying that previous summary, creating it that way. So now I've got this here. So when I go in, and you can see this looks different. So when we did this one, we said, just show me ones that have data in it. For this one, we said, okay, show us everything. So you can see this is a longer table. The data is the same. This is just showing zeros. And let's go back to charts. So I still have my pie chart because that's for the first one. And then down here, I now have my line chart. So you can see all these zeros here at the end for my line chart. So you can, if you want to build multiple graphs, you just build another summary within that same report. All right, cool. Let's go back to reports here. So that's how to build some report charts. We're going to build some more as we move forward into the next few reports as well. So I'm going to open my practice reports. The next report we're going to work on is going to be our activity report summary, but tracking time spent. So we want to know how much time spent individuals are spending in our program. So I'm going to go ahead and add new report, and I'm going to do activities by time spent. And again, I can call this testing. I can call this whatever I want to call that to describe it, to make it useful for me. I'm going to open my participant forms, and I'm going to use the same ones, my profile and my activity tracking. Those are my two forms I'm using for this sort of ongoing activity tracking we're doing. For the profile, again, I'm going to pull my system ID, last name, first name, and I'm going to go ahead and close that up. Activity tracking, I'm going to pull in my date, my time spent, my type of activity, and then who completed it. Again, so if I need to go back and check anything. Next. So the filter for this one, I'm not going to filter at this point. I'm just going to pull all of the data. Again, I could filter by date. I could filter by type of activity. So I could filter by different things. Let's just use all of the data to kind of see how it comes back. So I'm going to click next. All right, so here's my whole report. I have my time spent in here now as well. I'm going to click finish. Okay, so before when we built summaries, we built them based on counts. This time, when we go to build a summary, we're going to base it on time spent. There, okay. I don't need to filter for anything. I'm going to click next, and my columns are going to be, this time it's going to be activity and time spent. Next, so again, activity is going to be my baseline field. I only want to see those that have had entries. And the difference here is for time spent, I have some options here. I can choose to have the time spent put as a sum. So I want total time spent, or I want average time spent. So for this one, I want sum. So I'm going to just go up here to my time spent and do sum. So I remember that this summary is specifically around the sum of total time spent. And click next. Again, I could build a chart here as well. So I could turn that chart on. Again, I'm going to call it time spent sum. And I'm going to keep bar chart horizontal, if that makes sense. Type of activity. And then my x-axis is going to be time spent, because that is my numeric value over here. I'm going to choose time spent. All right. And I'm going to choose finish. All right, so my summary is going to come up. Here is my total time spent in each one of these categories. It does total it for me at the bottom as well. And then if I go into my chart, it's going to give me a table showing me time spent down here and your totals. Up here. All right. Excellent. So let's go back to summaries. Now that I have my time spent sum, let's say I want to know the average amount of time somebody's spending in my program. So I'm going to add a new summary, and I'm going to call this time spent average. Same thing. I'm just going to move on through. My columns are going to be activity and time spent. And I want to make the activity my baseline. I'm going to turn off all possible values. And then this time when I set up the data for time spent, I'm going to change this to average. I'm going to click next. Again, I could do a chart. Let's call this one time spent average. And then let's look at this as a vertical because we were having trouble with that one earlier. So we're going to keep this as type of activity, but we're going to switch this to time spent. Let's call this average. Oops. And then x-axis is going to be type of activity. Oh my goodness. There we go. And then our value is still going to be hours. And finish. Okay, so now you can see down here under my time spent average, you can see average hours. The average hours is going to be 13.27. This is the average per entry into each one of these different services. And then up here under charts, I still have my first chart, which is my sum of time spent. And then I have my second chart, which is my average time spent. As well. So you can sort of see how this is broken down in here as well. And again, we did get it right this time. So the type of services here, the average is up there. All right, cool. So that's our breakdown of time spent. So again, when you build out the report, let's go back to here. And we can open up these filters. You can do the profile, the activity tracking, pull in your time spent. When you build your summaries, you're going to choose the activity and service, and you're going to choose whether you want it to be a sum of time or an average of time there as well. All right, excellent. Again, charts, you can do multiple kinds of charts. Here too, this is going to be your time spent sum, and this is going to be your time spent average. All right, excellent. So the next thing we're going to talk about is money spent. So we have sort of counts of activities, and we've done summaries and charts for that. We have time spent, and we've done summary charts for that. Let's now look at an activity report with like a supportive service report. So I'm going to create a new report. So let's say that you need to know how many supportive services and amounts are being given out in each one of the categories. So I'm going to call this supportive services. We can just do that. And I'm going to add by amounts down here as my description. All right, so under participant forms this time, we're always going to, again, pull in the profile, but this time we know that our supportive services are being tracked here in this particular form. Again, your forms may be different depending on your organization, but this is the example within our sandbox site. So I'm going to pull over supportive services tracking, click next. Under profile, as always, we're going to do system ID, last name, first name, and I'm going to go ahead and close that up. And then for supportive service tracking, we're going to do date, type, and amount. And then again, I'm going to add in completed by, because again, if I need to go back and fix anything, I can do that really quickly. I'm going to choose next. So defining criteria, again, if I wanted to pull a particular time frame, I could do that. If I only wanted to see, let's say I only want to see supportive services that are greater than $10, you know, things like that. I could set up some pretty cool filters that way. We're not going to worry too much about that for this particular report. All right, so I'm going to choose next, and what's going to come up is again, the results. This looks good to me. I don't think there's any major issues. I don't need to go back and adjust anything. So I'm going to go ahead and click finish. All right. So again, this is my table. I've got 62 rows in here. But let's say I want a breakdown of entries by type of supportive service provided, or amount, let's do. So I'm going to go up to my summary because I know the data's here. And let's do amount. Amount by supportive service type. So for each supportive service type, how much has been spent? And I'm going to, again, do this as a sum because this is a number, you can do a total or you can do an average again. So total amount by supportive service type sum. I'm not going to set any requirements on this, so I'm just going to allow it to go to the next one. I'm going to choose type of supportive service and amount. There, because those are the two fields I want. Click next. Again, the type of supportive service, just like activities, is going to be our baseline field. And again, you can choose to include all possible values. So do you want to see zeros or not? Let's just leave that open. And then under amount, under values function, I want to sum. So I want the total for each type of supportive service. And then I could create here a chart again as I'm doing this. Normally, when I create summaries, I want to make sure that the summary is working correctly before I do the chart. So I'm going to go ahead and go finish. All right, so really quickly, you can see here the amount of entries that have been completed and the total amount spent in each one of these areas and the total amount. So this is really interesting information. Now, if I wanted to see a chart of this, so if I wanted to see a total, I would like to see personally, I think that a pie chart would be really interesting to see where the majority of our supportive service is going. So I'm going to go to edit over here, and I'm just going to flow through till I get to the chart. So it's just 3 over. And now I'm going to go ahead and add chart. I'm going to copy the summary name and drop that into my chart title. And this time I'm going to choose a pie chart, and my y-axis is going to be type of supportive services provided, and my values is going to be amount. All righty. Okay, sorry. Let me add a note real quick. Okay. And go ahead and click finish. All right, so it takes me back to my summary. I'm going to click on my chart. Cool. So you can see here, it's got all your different types of that have been provided, and you can hover over and see where you're spending the majority of your money. Now, if housing, let's say, for example, this happens a lot. Housing comes from a separate fund or a separate area. If you want to remove housing, you can do that really easily. And so you can see where the rest of the majority of the dollars are going here in the system as well. So let's go back to the summary. So we did the type sum. We can do another summary exactly like this, but it could be the average as well. So again, let's go ahead and, you know what? I want to go back because I should have paid attention to how I named that other summary. So let me go back to supportive services, go back to summary. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll just copy. Since I'm going to do the exact same report, but I'm going to do it as average. Now I can click add and sum, and I'm just going to add in average. Oops. Again, I'm going to move forward. I'm going to add some columns. So type of service provided and amount. Type of service provided is going to be our baseline. We don't want to include all values, and amount. This time we're going to do it as an average. Click next. Again, I could set up a chart if I wanted to, or just click finish and make sure I've got my data right. So this was my sum, and this is my average. So for every entry, so every document fee assistance is $400. For document acquisition, or I'm sorry, education fee, $50. So this is the average for each entry for this of the amounts. So that's really interesting information as well for when you move forward or when you're looking at your data, that sort of thing. All right. So the majority, let's go back to one more thing. So let's say that for supportive services, we were really interested to see if there's a difference between male and female. So, you know, are males getting different supportive services than females? So what we could do to get that information is look at our reports. We don't have gender in here right now. So we could easily go back and edit. And I have my forms. I'm just going to click next, and I'm going to go back into my profile, but I'm going to go ahead and pull gender in to this. So now I've added gender into my report. So I can always go back and add additional fields if I like, you know, the sort of data that I'm getting in the system as well. So we're good here. I'm just going to click next. And now I've got my gender in here. I'm going to click finish. All right, so let's say that I wanted to look at the total for males, right, instead of females. So I'm going to go back up to my summary here, And this is my total amount for everybody, but I could add a summary that, oops, let me go back again. I should have copied this again. So let me go back to summary. I'm going to copy this title because I want to do the same report, but I want it for just males. So I'm going to go up here and then I'm going to go sum, and then I'm going to go males. All right. So the difference here is that what we're going to do is we're going to open up and we're going to filter results right away. So I'm going to say, I want this report for the gender to equal male. So what I'm doing is I'm creating a summary saying, I just want to see all the males that received a particular supportive service. Click next. We're going to do the columns in the survey again are going to be type and amount. Next, type of supportive service is going to be our baseline. So really the only thing I'm changing is that I'm filtering from the beginning to just show me males. Next, I'm not going to do a chart. I'm just going to do finished. So I have my totals here. I'm going to scroll down. You can do tons of different summaries here, but now you can see that this male and this is the amount. Now you'll notice that I got these multiple values. Now I did this on purpose because this means I missed a step. So this is telling me that for clothing, we had these multiple values, but this is supposed to be a sum report. So I'm going to go back and edit this, because I know where I missed that at is here. So when I did type of supportive services as the baseline, I forgot to put them out. See how it says value function none. So now I need to change that to sum and click next and then finish. So here's the difference. Now you can see the supportive service males and then your sum down here. So I want to do the same thing, but this time for females. So what I'm going to do is just add another summary, but again, I'm going to copy. So I've got the right terminology. So I just say consistent. That's usually the best thing for me. Sometimes I get in there and I forget what I named the last one. All right. So this time it's going to be female. So again, when I go down here to the profile, I need to have the gender equal. So I'm saying from the very beginning, only pull for this summary anybody who's female. I'm going to choose next. I still need columns in my summary. So again, that's just going to be our type of supportive service and amount. Click next. I'm going to make the type of supportive service as my baseline field. I'm going to turn off all possible values. And then I'm going to change my amount to, again, sum. Next, and then finish. Okay, so as I scroll down, I'm going to see my males and I can see my totals and I can see my females and my totals. You can see it's a little bit less here as well. And you can see sort of the breakdown there too of the differences. You could do the exact same thing, but do averages, break down by male and female. So really, if any field is in your results report, you can create a summary based on that particular field. All right. Excellent. So let's go ahead and go back here. So the next report I want to tell you a little bit about is one that has been coming up a little bit more recently here, is the ability to say, I want to report of all of my participants and how many activities they've attended for a particular time frame or overall. So I just want, give me everybody that we serve, and for the last quarter, how many services did they access and what types of services did they access, kind of things. So we can do that pretty easily here as well. So we're going to add a new report and we're going to do, we can name it whatever we want. I'm going to call it activities by individual. And we can do participant list. All right. And okay. For participant forms, again, I'm going to want my profile and I'm going to want my activity tracking. Next, system ID. Again, I need last name and first name. And then I'm going to close that up because that's all I need for now. And then activity tracking, I'm going to want my date, type. I'm going to go ahead and pull hours in too, because that might be interesting. and completed by. Again, I'm not going to develop any criteria, or I could, let's go ahead and actually do date of service. So let's say I only want everybody that has received a service this year. All right, cool. So I'm seeing everybody here, time spent, what was entered. If something looks wrong, I can always click on here to go back. And I'm going to go ahead and click finish. Okay, so now I'm going to build a summary a little bit different in this one. So this summary is going to be, I usually call it by participant. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead, and I'm not going to set any filters. I'm going to go next. Participant profile. I'm going to go last name, first name. I'm going to go activity. So you see the difference here is I'm actually pulling in the profile, last name and first name, because that's what I want it to be on. That's the important sort of pieces as part of this, because this is the list of my participants here. All right, we're going to do activity type, and we're going to go ahead and do total count and time spent. So I want to know for each activity, how much total count and time spent did they have? Next, and now I'm going to go in and do hours. I want some. And last name is going to, oh no, I'm going to leave that. I'm not going to do a baseline field right now. Okay, so the only thing I did is go in and go, okay, I want sum of values. The values function, I want the sum of the time spent, sorry. Next, and finish. Okay, so what's going to come up here is it's going to give you all of the different activities and how many entries there were and the time spent on these. So you can see really quickly all of the things Carolina has had done, the total count and the time spent that she has spent in each one of the programming or overall in your program. As far as that goes. So this is, you know, a lot of times folks just want to know each participant, how many services they've had and how much time they've spent in the system. And then this is sort of a breakdown of that information. Again, if we didn't want the type of service, you could just pull that out of the summary to just give you total accounts of service delivery, sort of depth of service. Now, let's say that you wanted to know, let's say how many individuals received case management. So mentoring, this particular site calls it mentoring dash one-on-one case management. So what I normally do is I go and I copy this, and this time I'm going to add a summary for just this. So I just want to see my total accounts for each individual for this particular one. So again, I'm going to go last name. I'm going to go down to activity tracking and do type of activity service equals mentoring. So I'm saying I only want to see mentoring for this particular report, not everything. So again, I want to know who, so last name, first name, and I want to know the hours, or so the how many instances and how much time. So now I'm saying, okay, I just want to know the people, how many instances and how much time they spent in one-on-one case management. Next, and again, finish. So I'm going to scroll down here. So the first one was everything. And then this one's really helpful because it's going to give me each individual and how many case management have they have. So I can say each one of them has only had one instance of case management so far. So let's say that again, let's say I wanted to look at another particular, let's say pro-social activity. So this is nice because you can see the list of ones that have information here. So you can do pro-social, add summary there. I'm going to name it pro-social. The only thing I'm going to do is filter results on type of activity. So type of activity should equal pro-social. Next, and my columns are simply going to be, again, last name, oops, there we go, last name, first name, close that up. Total count and time spent. That's the information I want for each participant, and for time, I want a sum. Okay. Again, you've got your total at the top. Each summary you build goes down towards the bottom. So this is mentoring, and now I have pro-social, and I can see the difference here as well. I can see that there's more total counts in here than up above, and my total time as well. All right. Excellent. Okay. So that reviews how to do all of the different types of reports that we talked about. So let's go back to, let me make sure your screen sharing. Okay, good. Let's go back to our training agenda. So we talked about activity reports, and we talked about charts, all the different, there's 4 different kinds of charts. Bar chart, oops, sorry. Whew, sliding too fast. Oh, okay. Bar chart, horizontal and vertical, and a line chart and a pie chart. When building reports, oops, oh, goodness, you guys, I'm sorry, this is being very weird. Okay. Bar and line chart settings, again, same as summary, choose the activity type, counts, that sort of thing. So you'll have that for future. And then pie charts are a little bit different, but you can have that as well. So you'll have access to this PowerPoint here as well to help you walk through those things. So let's go back. Oh, goodness. Okay. To the different kinds of reports that we did. So we did activity reports with charts, activity report summary based on time spent, also based on money spent. For both of these, you can do sums and averages. The last one we just went over is activity report for individual participants. The last one to talk about is the assessment report. And this is pretty straightforward as well, just like your other similar reports. So let's go back up here to our breadcrumbs. And I'm still in my current folder, which is my Shannon's practice folder. I can see that right here. And I'm going to click add new report. So assessments in the system are usually like your surveys, your outcomes, that sort of thing. So I'm just going to do this as a survey report. And I'm just going to do survey down here. So depending on when you open up your participant forms here, you'll see the different forms that you have in your system. One of the ones I have in here is our community crime victim survey. So this is a survey that I want to just run some totals on. So again, I'm going to pull my profile in because I want you to know who, and I'm going to pull my survey in because that's the data I'm looking for. I'm going to click next. For my profile, again, system ID, last name, first name, close that up. For crime victim services, I can pull whatever data fields I want in here. So date, timeline for completion. I'm not going to put all these fields in because this is a lot, but we'll just do a few, these ones at the beginning. So again, you can pull whatever you want over at any time. I'm going to add in the completed by, because again, if I need to go back and look at something, I can click there. I can click next. So now is where I could set criteria if I wanted to. So there's things like for timeline for completion, I could choose label of value or label and value. So this is a little bit more advanced, but I'm going to show you the difference here. So if I do label and value, so when we build things in Case Manager, sometimes we say the label on the front is a particular answer, but there's a score on the back end. And that's the value. So when you pull reports, you can choose to see, I just want the report to show the label. I just want the report to show the value, or I want to show both. And so I'm going to show both so you can see what that looks like here. All right, cool. So I'm going to go ahead and click next again, and it's going to come up and show you my data. Again, if it's something big or you've got bigger columns like this, you can just scroll to the right to be able to see everything in there. All right, cool. And I'm going to go ahead and click finish. So that timeline for completion is where we just talked about the label versus the score on the back end. So when you choose to see both, it's going to create a column for each one of those answers here in the system as well. So you can see I've got intakes versus exits. I've got answers to some of the questions here. These are scored answers as well. So I can really sort of quickly see what's been entered or not entered. I can also, if there's a particular question I'm mostly concerned about, if I click on the top, it's going to bring the answers to those up there as well. If I want a timeline report, I can just click that. It's going to put in the order of timeline as well. I could also use the value there. So these are the overall scores. Again, it's really going to be dependent on your particular surveys, but you can see it's really easy to build these scores in here as well. Also, if you wanted to sort of pull a report that specifically said, how many times have you experienced a particular question? This is where your surveys come, your summaries come in really helpful. So what I normally do is if I want to know more about this, so I want a chart that breaks out this question, I can copy this question and then go to my summary, add a summary, and I just add that, what I just copied to here. And then I say, I want to know, my data I want to know about is this, how many times have you experienced crime? And if I wanted it just for intake, for example, I could say, I only want intake answers to this question. So this equals the label of intake. Or I could do the value equals 1 because that was the value on the back end, but I'm just going to say equals intake. So for this summary, I only want intake data. Next. So the other thing I'm going to do is, now that I just did that, I'm going to do intake only in my summary name, because sometimes we forget those things. So in my columns, again, I'm going to want this answer here, and I'm going to want total count and unduplicated count. Might be really interested to know there. And because I want this answer to be my baseline, I'm going to set it as baseline. And I'm going to include all possible values just in case. And my total count and unduplicated count are fine. I click next and finish. So what this is going to show you is how many times have you experienced crime? So at intake, people coming in, this was their total counts and unduplicated counts there as well. Here they're equal because there's only one entry for each, but you can kind of switch those up as you go. So if you really wanted to have a question like this, or if you were, let's say applying for a grant, and you said, you know what, we have a lot of individuals who have experienced significant amounts of crime. You ask this question, and then you could pull this data really easily. And if you have, 40% that are more than 10 times, things like that, this data could be really helpful for you as well from there. All right. So again, assessment reporting, we'll go over more advanced assessment reporting as we move forward too. It's a little bit more specialized because everybody's assessment and reports are a little bit different and they're scored different, things like that. So as we move forward, we'll show you some other options around how to build some really cool assessment reports in the system. Okay, so that really gets us through all of the reports that we were going to go over today. Like the previous training, what I'm going to do is I have exercises for each one of these report things. So it's going to walk you through exactly what we talked about today. So I'll drop those into a folder and share that with you as well. The last thing I'm going to share with you is the Common Case Manager reporting document. Let me show you what that looks like. So what we've done here is sort of gone through and said, okay, what are some common reports that we think are helpful on a day-to-day basis, are pretty consistent across different groups. And that's what we're calling this Common Case Manager reporting. So the first section here is, who are we serving? So this goes over building the demographic report and intake and program status report. So it's mostly saying this is what you should name the report, and this is sort of what the report is for in the system. The other reports that we think are important are sort of tracking, what are we doing? So we always say with Case Manager, it tracks who you're serving, what you're doing, and the impact you're having. So what are we doing? This is your attendance tracking. This is how much case management is being done. This is your service and activities reports. So these are sort of categories of reports and sort of why they're important that we recommend that you have in your site. And again, referral reports, are you referring out? Where are they going to? That sort of thing. So this is sort of what are we doing? And these are sort of 4 common reports that are helpful with that. What impact are we having? Again, this is going to be more of your outcomes. This is your assessments, your pre-posts, progression reports. So are there certain steps that people have to go through your program? Are they pre-apprenticeship? Then they go to apprenticeship. So tracking that. And then another interesting impact one too is what impact are you having based on where are your referrals coming from, your incoming referrals? So are you sort of, does the community know about you because you're getting referrals from multiple places, you know, that sort of thing. So that's when we talk about impact, that's still sort of your overall community impact and who trusts you to send folks to your organization. And then the last one is the one that we tend to sort of miss sometimes. And that's, what is the quality of our data? How good is our data? You know, we know it can be hard to enter data all the time, and our priority is certainly participants and the folks we're working with. So how do we know our data is good? And some of these are usage reports. So how often is staff logging into the use system? How long are they in for? What are they sort of accessing? Staff reports, you can run any of the reports that we ran today. You could also flip and run for case managers instead of participants. So you can also track things that way. And we'll do some of that on our more advanced training too. Duplicate checks, definitely important to do some duplicate checks. Make sure you don't have duplicate entries as well as duplicate participants, that sort of thing. And then data entry completion reports. So this is really interesting too, to be able to say, are all the forms and fields being filled out? We do try to put, required fields on things, but sometimes they just don't necessarily always get completed. So that sort of data entry completion reports. Again, this is just sort of a quick overview, and outline of our common case manager reporting. In our next training on reports, what we're going to go over is how to build one for each one of these, and then sort of have a template that says, our demographic report is called this, and this is why you look for it. So sort of creating a directory a bit of all of your reports so people know what report, when to pull it, and what you're looking for in it. So we're going to be working on that template as well moving forward. All right, so let's go ahead and go to the end here. I think, oh my goodness. Sorry, it's acting super weird. Okay. So again, next steps, I'm going to share the Google Drive that'll have all this information in there. Also share a link to my calendar if you want to put a follow-up meeting on to talk specifically about your information. And then we will have future trainings as well. We're going to be doing them monthly, Wednesdays at 1 p.m. The June calendar should be coming out soon. And we're going to run these through September. So thank you very, very much for your time. Appreciate it. Thanks for all the amazing work you do in the community. And thanks for letting Case Manager help support you. Take care.